Learning Portuguese is like being married for a long, long time. After 20 years, you suddenly find out that there is a new quirk to that person you didn't know before, and now it's like all new again. Oi, eu sou o Eli, meu nome é Eli, e eu tô aqui para falar um pouco sobre os usos comuns da preposição de em português. But this lesson is in English and Portuguese as well. Vamos começar. Hi, Ali again. And this time I'm going to start with the first things. Actually, the first thing, which is pronunciation. You've probably heard people saying G for this preposition. Sometimes they would say D, depending on where they are from. If you want to have a standard, so to speak, a standard pronunciation, stick to G. It's much easier and much more common. The other pronunciation, D, is also common, but not all over Brazil. In some places, people will say G, and some places, people will say D, and even in the same region, they might change the pronunciation somewhat. Like the place where I'm from, they change it G and D, and it doesn't really make a difference. However, when you have the preposition with an article like this, the pronunciation changes a bit. The G, the J sound, the J, is lost. The D becomes a hard D when you have an article. For example, do país. You wouldn't say Ju, but do país. Likewise, da mulher, dos homens, das crianças. Okay? And that's the only thing you have to worry about when talking about like the pronunciation of G. Really, you have nothing else to worry about. And now, let's take a look at some of the very common uses of the preposition G. And the first one is when you want to ask where someone is from. Like, where are you from? You know that from, of corresponds to G in Portuguese. That's how you would ask it. De onde você vem? De onde você vem? And some people might even land G and on G and would say donde. And that's actually very common. That might sound like uneducated in some places, but don't worry. That sounds actually very Brazilian. Donde você vem? De onde você vem? And you just have to pay attention to the way you answer because depending on where you mention, for example, if it's a city, if it's a country, if it's a state, it's a town, you need to use or drop the article. For example, when you talk about cities, eu venho de São Paulo. Don't include the article. It's not do São Paulo, da São Paulo. No, no, no. Eu venho de São Paulo. But when you're talking about a country, you do need to include that. Eu venho do Brasil. Eu venho dos Estados Unidos. Eu venho da China. Okay? And when you mention specific places like maybe a geographical spot, I don't know if you say that in English, like lake or something, or when you're talking about a street, neighborhood, you do have to include the article. Ele vem da Rua do Ouvidor. Todos os dias ele vem da Quinta Avenida para nosso bairro para comprar frutas. Next up is a very common use as well. Imagine you're like riding a bike. In English, you do have a specific verb, ride a bike, drive a car. But in Portuguese, we say actually something like go by car, go by bike. And here are some of the examples I have for you. Vamos esperá-lo pouco. Ele está vindo lá da Avenida Paulista de carro. Next example. Eu prefiro ir de carro para o trabalho. Assim, não preciso pegar o ônibus. Of course, you could say, eu prefiro dirigir, which is the verb to drive, but it wouldn't sound as natural, or it wouldn't come as natural to a Brazilian. It wouldn't occur as naturally. That's what I mean. To a Brazilian, like, eu prefiro ir de carro. And by the way, there is a very nice song, very old as well, that I'm going to include here right now for you to see. Like, vou de táxi. I really like that. Eu gosto de andar de bicicleta para perder peso. É muito bom. Okay? So these are very important things. There is one exception when you want to say on foot. I hope you say that in English, because when you use your feet to move around, you would say vou a pé, but that's an exception you can find in the supporting article that I include with this video. Next up, do you know what this is? I hope you do. If you don't, maybe we are not the same age. I had one of those in my past, and it's a typewriter. Whenever you are describing the purpose of something, you very, very likely can use de to describe that purpose. Máquina de escrever, máquina de lavar, toalha de mesa. Isso é de fazer o quê? Isso é de limpar os ouvidos. That's actually very common. And when you say, isso é de quê? That's like, what is it made from? Of. But if you say, isso é de fazer o quê? Isso é de fazer o quê? That means, what's that good for? What do I need that for? Okay? And next up is, oh, and if you speak Spanish, you might feel compelled to say amanhã when you want to say in the morning, but don't fall for this trap. Actually, we say it differently in Portuguese. We have, when we talk about the period of the day, we use de manhã, de tarde, de noite, de madrugada. However, there is another way to say that. You will see that in some textbooks. You can use that if you want to, but if you want to simplify your life, and I think you do want to simplify and make it easier, who doesn't, right? If you want to make your life easier, stick to that. It's much easier. We use that all the time, and the alternative is more common in writing, not in speaking. O que você gosta de fazer de manhã? Next example, de tarde. Sempre tiro uma boa soneca. Me ajuda a trabalhar com maior foco durante a tarde. And the last example, você pode vir hoje de noite? Tem um tempinho antes das 8. Again, de manhã, de tarde, de noite. Much more common. And now the takeaways. I do want you to leave this short lesson with this in mind. Don't try to memorize everything right now. You just know some general guidelines. You want to keep the pronunciation clear with you because it's going to be very important, but you have to pay attention to how Brazilians use that because only by looking at how we use that and analyzing and purposefully using that because you want to test something, you want to test some hypothesis, is that you're going to be able to use that properly and maybe let it sink in and maybe become fluent very quickly, or at least become more confident, which is very important. And now, this has been Ali. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, this is going to help me so much. And you can check out other videos or visit my website, www.portuguesewitheli, or Ellie, that's my pronunciation, .com. So portuguesewitheli.com. Visit that website. You'll see so many articles there to help you improve your Portuguese quickly and most important of all, for sure. Muito obrigado por assistir esse vídeo até aqui e até a próxima. Tchau!